Hello friends, how are you? Today we will revise time of supply. So this will be a quick revision for time of supply. So what is time of supply? So first we have decided that it is a supply, it is a taxable supply. Then we need an event, a date on which tax should be paid. It can be issue of invoice, it can be date of payment, it can be receipt of goods. Whatever it can be, this will be decided on the basis of provisions of this chapter, that is time of supply. So we are going to discuss each and every provision of this chapter. So let me just brief you. So what is time of supply? So this chapter deals with determining the event which can be issue of invoice, payment, entry in books of account on which GST liability will arise, on which GST will be liable to be paid. So in this chapter we have three sections to cover. Section 31 is for invoice time limit. What is when the invoice should be issued, how much time we have to after making supply for issue of invoice. And section 12, that is time of supply for goods, and section 13, time of supply for services. So let's first discuss section 31, time limit for issue of invoice. So in this first provision, law says where supply involves movement of goods, where supply involves any movement of goods, like goods are moving from one place, from supplier to recipient. It can be moved from the supplier itself, like when you order for something from Amazon itself delivers the products to you, or it can be moved from the recipient itself. Like if you go to DMart, buy your goods, take the goods to your home on your own, in your car, auto, whatever may be. So movement can happen from the supplier side, recipient side. In both cases, this provision will apply, and the time limit for issue of invoices before or at the time of removal of goods. Before or at the time of removal of goods. So let's take an example. I am buying something from Amazon. Let's say I buy an iPhone from Amazon. So whenever Amazon will move the iPhone from his godown for dispatch to me, whenever the movement takes place, that date will be the last date to issue invoice. It can issue invoice before that date, or on that date. So invoice date will be the date on which the goods have been moved from the godown of Amazon. So movement can happen from supplier or recipient. Example, Amazon, DMart. In DMart, you go there, you select your goods, what you want to buy, you take the goods to the billing counter, you get them billed, then you pay the amount. So whenever the billing is done, when you are moving the goods. So in this case, recipient is doing the movement, like you are taking the goods to your home. So movement can happen from supplier or recipient. Time limit for issue of invoice will be before or at the time of removal. Now the second case is where supply does not involve movement. Where supply does not involve movement of goods, or any other case. That another case is like where supply does not involve movement of goods. So in this case, delivery of goods, making goods available to recipient. So time of supply, we should issue invoice on the date on which goods are delivered or made available to recipient. So let's take an example. Let's say I give a contract to let's say I am buying a lift. So I give a contract to a lift making company that I want this lift. So what they will do, they will come to my home, they will assemble it there, they will install it. So that time limit for issue of invoice will be the date on which the lift is installed at my home, on which installation is completed. So that date will be the date. Now we have continuous supply of goods. So what is continuous supply of goods? So continuous supplies of goods is where goods are supplied at regular intervals, like every month. It can be every month, every week. So there should be a regular interval, and a periodic statement for the goods supplied is issued by the supplier, or periodic payment is made by the recipient to the supplier. So best example for this case is supply of gas by IGL. So IGL supplies gas through the gas pipeline to your home, and on a monthly basis, that is periodical, IGL issues a statement of how much you have used the gas, and on the basis of that, invoice is also issued along with the GST applicable on it. So in case of continuous supply of goods, the time limit to issue invoices before or at the time of issue of periodical statement or receipt of periodical payment. So whenever the periodical statement will be issued, before or at the time of issuing the statement, or if there is no statement is issued but payment is made by the recipient, then before receipt of such periodical payment. Okay, then moving on, goods sent on sale or return basis. So there are some cases in which what supplier does is he sends the goods to the recipient. He says, if you like the goods, accept it, pay for it. If you don't like the goods, you can return it. So in those cases where recipient has the option to return the goods if he does not like the goods, that is goods sold on sale or return basis. So if recipient approves the sale, he accepts the goods, he will make the payment. If not, he will return the goods. So in those cases, the time limit for issue of invoice will be earlier of supply of goods or 6 months from the date of removal. So supply of goods means when the recipient has accepted the goods, that will be the date of supply of goods. Or 6 months from the date of removal. Whenever goods are removed from supplier's location, 6 months from that date will be the last date when supplier can issue invoice. So goods shall be issued if on the date of supply, if goods has been accepted by the recipient. If not accepted, we will wait for the 6 months to elapse from the date of removal, and the ending of 6 months will be the last date on which invoice should be issued. Okay, it's clear. So we have studied provisions for issue of invoice. First is where goods supply involves movement of goods. Then we will issue invoice before or at the time of removal of goods. And if supply does not involve movement of goods, then invoice shall be issued whenever the goods are made available to recipient. Then we have studied in case of continuous supply, goods invoice shall be issued before issue of periodical statement or receipt of periodical payment. Then last, when goods are sold on sale or return basis, then earlier of when the supply is made, when the goods are delivered to the recipient, or 6 months from the date of removal, whichever is earlier. Then we have section 12, that is time of supply for goods. So we will study this now. Okay, so in case of supply of goods, we have two type of supply. First is normal supply, that is forward charge, when the tax is payable by the supplier itself. And second is reverse charge mechanism, where the supplier issues bill of supply and GST on supply is paid by the recipient. So in those cases, we will discuss both of these cases. First is forward charge. So in case of forward charge, we have for time of supply, we have date of issue of invoice, last date to issue invoice, section 31, or payment, whichever is earlier. So this is normal provisions. But so normal provision is date of issue invoice or last date to issue invoice or payment, whichever is earlier. Okay. But this payment, I have put cross against payment because there is a notification 66/2017 which says in case of supply of goods, accept composition supplier and specified actionable claims supplier, no GST payable on advance. So this notification, what does it mean? It means only this condition will apply in case of forward charge. We will only consider date of issue of invoice, that is the actual date of issue, or the last date of issue of invoice as per section 31, which we have studied just now. So the payment condition will not apply because of this notification, except on composition supplier and supplier supplying specified actionable claims, that is lottery, betting, gambling. Okay. So for exam purposes, you just have to remember time limit for supply of goods. Time of supply for goods will be date of issue of invoice, that is actual invoice, or last date of issue invoice, whichever is earlier. Okay. And in case of RCM, we have three conditions. First is date of goods received, date on which goods are received. Second is date of payment, date on which payment is made. I will come to payment later. Payment also means two things here. Then date plus 30 days from issue of invoice, that is 31st day from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. Although supplier will not issue tax invoice, he will issue bill of supply because tax is payable on RCM basis. So date of goods received, date of payment, or 31st day from the date of issue of invoice, whichever is earlier will be the date of time of supply for goods in case of RCM. So yeah, what do you mean by payment? Payment means recording receipt of payment in books or credit of payment in bank account, whichever is earlier. So if supplier has recorded payment in his books of account before actual payment is received in the bank, then we will take that date. Let's say I recorded payment in my books on 14th January and actual payment was received on 16th January. So 14th January will be the date of payment. And if payment is received, in case of reverse case, payment received on 14th January but I have not recorded it till now. So in those cases, date 14th January we will take. So whichever is earlier, recording receipt of payment in books of account or credit of payment in bank account, whichever is earlier. Now I've written if these conditions are not applicable, then we will take time of supply as date of entry of goods in books of account recipient. If the above conditions are not available, we do not have the date of receipt of goods or date of payment, date of invoice, then we will take the date of entry of goods in books of recipient as time of supply. Now time of supply for vouchers. So what are vouchers? Let's understand first vouchers. So you have seen Pantaloons issues gift voucher, which you can use to buy goods from Pantaloons showroom. Like Amazon issues gift voucher, which can be used to redeem against purchases made from Amazon. So in definition terms, vouchers are instruments which can be used as consideration for supply of goods or services in part or in full. So let's say I did a shopping of 5,000 from Pantaloons and I had voucher of 3,000. So I used 3,000 voucher for making the payment and rest 2,000 I paid in cash. So voucher can be used in for payment in part or in full. So voucher are instruments which can be used as consideration for supply of goods or services. So now the case is when these vouchers are issued, not when I'm using that voucher. When the supplier, like the Pantaloons, will issue a gift voucher or Amazon will issue a gift. When these vouchers are issued, what will be the time of supply for these vouchers? So the provision says first we have to check whether the supply is identifiable at the time of issue voucher. Here supply means the supply which will be made through the voucher. So if it is a general voucher, like if I have received a voucher from, let's say, Zomato, so I can purchase any food from Zomato. So different foods may be having different tax rates. So supply is not identified at the time of issue of voucher. Okay. And if I purchase a shirt voucher from Pantaloons, which can be redeemed against purchase of shirts only, so supply is identifiable at the time of issue of voucher, that this voucher can be used for supply of shirts only, for purchase of shirts only. So supply is identified at the time of issue voucher, that supply will be made of shirts. So when the supply is identified at the time of issue voucher, yes, then we will take date of issue as time of supply. If not, then date of redemption as time of supply. Let's take an example. Let's say food coupon issued by Sodexo. So food coupon I can use for different kind of foods, groceries as well. So different kind of foods have different tax rates. So supply is not identified at the time of issue of food coupon by Sodexo. So time of supply in this case will be date of redemption. That is date on which I am using that Sodexo coupon. And in case of shirt coupon by Pantaloons, because the supplier also know that this coupon will be used for purchase of shirts only. So in this case, time of supply will be the date of issue. Date when this voucher or the coupon is issued. Okay. Now moving on, time of supply for residuary cases not covered above. If there are any cases which we have not covered, the law says we will take, if first preference will be like this, will be our first preference and this will be our second preference. So first preference will be due date of filing periodical return. First we will take due date on which return is filed, that we will study in the returns chapter. For now you can remember that returns are filed monthly and dates are like 20th of the month, 10th of the month, these kind. Then if that is not available, first preference is not available, then second preference, date of GST paid. On date on which we are paying the GST will be the date for the time of supply. Simple. Now we have time of supply for additional consideration like interest, penalty, fees for late payment. Let's understand. Let's say I supply some goods to my customer and I make a contract with him that if you don't pay for the goods supply within 3 months, I will charge interest at the rate of 2% per month or part of the month. Okay. Now the supplier pays me in 4 months and let's say goods value was 1 lakh. So 1 lakh. So I will charge him interest 2% for 1 month. That is 2000. So this 2000 is additional consideration. So what will be the time of supply for this additional consideration? So law says the time of supply for this additional consideration received will be the date on which that such consideration is received. So whenever I will receive that consideration, the date on which I have received that consideration, that date will be the time of supply for such additional consideration. Let me give you an example in writing. Let's say I supplied Mr. X supplied goods to Mr. Y of 1 lakh. Contract was to pay in 3 months, otherwise 2% interest will be there. Now Mr. Y paid after 4 months. So he have to pay 2% interest. So he paid me 1,02,000. So for the 1 lakh, time of supply will be date of issue of invoice, because invoice is coming earlier, payment is coming later, and the rest of 2000 will be the date on which payment is received. Time of supply for this 2000 extra I have received will be on date on which payment is received. Okay. Now we have time of supply for services. So first we will study section 31, invoice time late, same as we have studied for goods. So we will study time of supply, time limit to issue invoice in case of services under section 31. So that part we are studying here. For goods part, we have already studied it before. So in case, so we have three cases. First is normal case. So invoice needs to be issued within 30 days from provision of service. When service has been provided, you need to issue invoice within 30 days from the date of provision of service. And if you are an NBFC, bank, financial institution, you will get 45 days. That is 15 days extra time you will get. Now, in case of banks, NBFC, financial institution, telecom, making supply between distinct persons. If like a bank has one branch in Jaipur and one branch in Delhi, and supply is made from between Jaipur branch and Delhi branch, that is what we call distinct persons. So when a supply is made for bank, financial institution, telecom, NBFC between distinct persons, then invoice to be issued, first preference will be before or at the time of recording of supply in books. When supply is recorded in books of the bank, before or at the time of recording such supply. Then our second preference will be before end of quarter during which supply was made. So if supply was made in, let's say, first quarter, that is April to June quarter, and before end of 30th June, that invoice has to be issued for such supply. So that will be our second preference. First preference, recording supply in books before or at the time of recording supply in books. Second preference, before end of quarter during which supply was made. Then we have continuous supply of services. As we have studied continuous supply of goods, in case of services also, there are continuous supply of services, where services are supplied continuously at a regular period of intervals like monthly, daily, weekly. So we have three cases in continuous supply of services. If in the contract due date of payment is mentioned, we know what is the due date of payment, then invoice to be issued before or at the time of due date of payment. So on or before due date of payment. If due date of payment is not known from the contract, that is second case, then at or before receipt of payment, at the time of receipt of payment or before it. Or if there is a special case, payment is linked to completion of any event. There is some milestone event, like you have to construct this part, then your payment will be due. Like in case of construction contract, there can be milestones, like if you construct one floor, then your payment will be due. So in case of such milestone based completion payments, then on or before completion of such milestone event, on or before of completion of such milestone event. So these three cases we have studied for time limit to issue invoice under section 31. First is normal case, where you have to issue invoice within 30 days. 40 days in case of banks, financial institutions. Second is distinct persons before recording of supply, before end of quarter. Third is continuous supply services. If we know the due date of payment, before due date of payment. If we do not know the due date of payment, before or at the time of receipt of payment. And in case of milestone payments, event linked payments, before or at the time of completion of such event. Simple. Now we will study the time of supply. So similar to goods, we have two cases. First is forward charge, second is reverse charge mechanism. So forward charge, reverse charge. So in forward charge, we have two cases here. Like in goods, we had just that there was condition like invoice or payment, but payment condition was cancelled with the notification. Then we have been left with just only two conditions: invoice or the last date to issue invoice. Because condition for payment was cancelled by the notification, which says that we do not have to issue invoice for any advance payment received in case of goods only, not services. That notification does not apply in case of services. So first case is if invoice issued within time. We have timely issued invoice, that is within 30 days, 40 days, 45 days of provision of services. Then date earlier of invoice or payment, date of invoice or date of payment, whichever is earlier. If invoice not issued within time, if invoice not, like we have not issued invoice within 30 days from the provision of service, we are issuing late, then earlier of provision of service or payment. Let's say I provided services on 15th June. So my due date to issue invoice will be 15th July. I have to issue invoice within 30 days. But I issued invoice on 20th July. I issued it late. And I received payment on 25th. So in this case, time of supply will be earlier of provision of service or payment. So that provision of service was 15th June. So my time of supply will be 15th June, not 15th July on which I issued invoice. Invoice or payment condition will be applicable only when invoice was issued on time. If not issued on time, then in provision of service or payment earlier of these two dates. Now we have RCM case. So in RCM we have two conditions: earlier of date of payment, date on which payment has been received, or 61st date from the date of issue invoice. When the supplier has issued invoice to recipient, 61st day from that date or date of payment, whichever is earlier. Now in both cases, forward charge and reverse charge, if above conditions are not available, then we will take date of receipt of services in recipient's books as time of supply. If all these conditions are not applicable, mostly they will be applicable. But if we have a rare case, or if question says so, the question does not provide you these details, then we will take date of receipt of services in recipient's books as time of supply. Now I have written residuary cases, vouchers, additional conditions, time of supply will be same as goods. Like residuary cases, like if we do not have these conditions, like we have what we have studied earlier, that time of supply will be the date of filing of return, first preference, second preference, date of payment of GST. That those were the two residual cases where these conditions we did not have the time of movement of goods, supply, this payment, we do not have these conditions, then that will be the case. And in case of vouchers, similarly we have two cases. If we know the service supply, what will be the supply on the date of issue voucher, then date of issue. If we do not know what kind of supply will be made from that voucher, then date of redemption. Simple. Then additional consideration. If we receive any additional consideration which can be for interest, penalty, late fees, for delayed payment, then such time of supply for such additional consideration will be the date on which such consideration is received. Now we have excess payment received up to ₹1,000. So if let's say I issued invoice for 5,000 and I received 5,500 from my customer. So I have option to take this extra 500, the time of supply for this extra 500 as the date of issue of next invoice. Let me explain you with an example. Airtel receives payment of 2,000 against invoice of 1,400. So we have received 600 rupees extra payment. So invoice date was 5th July, payment received 10th July. So for 1,400, invoice was issued for 1,400. So for 1,400, as we have studied, what will be the time of supply? If invoice issued within time, invoice date 5th July. So let's say the service was provided on 1st of July. So if invoice issued within time, then invoice or payment, whichever is earlier, will be the time of supply. That is, 5th of July will be the time of supply for 1,400. Okay, and up to 1,000 we have option to take extra payment received up to 1,000. Time of supply for such extra payment received will be the invoice date of next month. So next month's invoice date is 5th August. So for 600, invoice date time of supply will be the 5th of August. Okay, simple. Let me explain you one more time. So normal case, time of supply will be invoice or payment, whichever is earlier in case of where invoice was issued within time. But if we receive extra payment, like let's say I issued invoice for 5,000 and I got 500 rupees extra I got. I issued invoice on 5th July. I received payment on 10th July. So if we apply the normal condition invoice or payment, then payment I received on 10th July. So for 5,500, 5,000 will be time of supply for 5,000 will be 5th July and rest 500 will be 10th July. But this section says for extra payment received up to 1,000, we can use next invoice date as time of supply. Okay. Now we have one circular which we have to study from study material. So I will just go there. Okay. So this is the circular, and this is about services by services in respect of construction of road and maintenance thereof or of national highway projects of NHAI in hybrid annuity mode. So what is this hybrid annuity mode? What is this? What are these services? So what happens is when highways are constructed, so the company which constructs the highways has to not just construct the highway, it has to maintain it for a number of years, which can be 15 to 17 years. It has to maintain the highway for 15-17 years. So the contract is like that: you have to build and operate, and after operating for 15-17 years, then we have to transfer it to the NHAI, to the government. So it is also called BOT model, build, operate and transfer model. So you have to construct the highway, and you have to operate it for 15 to 17 years, then you will transferring it to the government. So the consideration in this case is not only for the construction of the highway, but also for the operation of the highway. And government staggers the consideration so much that they can control the vendor so that he does the repair, maintenance, operations of the highway as per the contract. So instead of paying most of the amount when construction is completed, they hold back a considerable amount and pay it in installments over the time of the operations period, like that over the period of 15-17 years. So in this case we have confusion, like there are two services. One is construction and the other is operation and maintenance. So what will be the time of supply? Will we have to split the two services and calculate time of supply individually for these two services, that is construction and operation and maintenance, or there will be only one time of supply? So government has clarified, under the hybrid annuity model of NHAI, the concessionaire has to construct the new road and provide operation and maintenance of the same, which is generally over a period of 15 to 17 years, and the payment of same is spread over the years. What is the time of supply for the purpose of payment of tax on shared service under HAM model? So clarification. Under the hybrid annuity model of concession agreements, the highway development projects are under design, build, operate and transfer model. That you have to design, build, operate and then transfer model, wherein the concessionaire is required to undertake new construction of highway as well as operation and maintenance. Like I said, you have to not only to construct but also to operate and maintain. The payment terms for the construction portion as well as operation and maintenance portion of the contract are provided in the agreement between National Highway Authority of India and the concessionaire. Payment are provided in the agreement. HAM contract is a single contract for construction as well as operation. It is a single contract. There are no two separate agreements for construction and operation. It is a single contract. Payment terms are so staggered that the concessionaire is held accountable. Don't confuse concessionaire with something else. Here, concessionaire is the person who is constructing the highway, that is the construction company. To make it relatable to you, just consider L&T, which is the biggest construction company of India in terms of constructing highways. Okay, so payment terms are so staggered that the concessionaire is held accountable for the repair and maintenance of the highway as well. So as I said, government holds lot of payments and pays it in installments over the period of 15-17 years, so that they can control the vendor to ensure that highway is operated and maintained well. The contract needs to be looked at holistically based on the services to be performed by the concessionaire and cannot be artificially split into two separate contracts for construction and operation and maintenance based on the payment terms. So what government is saying, that you have to look at the contract holistically. You have to consider the contract as one, not, you cannot split the contract between construction and O&M. Concessionaire is bound contract is complete not only the construction of a highway but also to operate and maintain the same. In HAM contract, the payment is made spread over the contract period in installments, and payment for each installment is to be made after specified periods or on completion of event as specified in the contract. So payment is made in installments or on completion of such specified events, okay, which is mentioned in the contract. So this will be called as continuous supply of services. It is clarified that the tax liability on the concessionaire under HAM contract, including on the construction portion, would arise at the time of issuance of invoice or receipt of payment, which is earlier. So the tax liability for both the services, construction and O&M, will arise earlier of invoice or payment, whichever is earlier. If invoice issued on or before specified date or the date of completion of the event specified in the contract. So if invoice issued on time, that is we have studied in case of continuous supply, if we know the due date of payment, invoice needs to be issued before the due date of payment. If invoice issued before time, on time, then we will take the condition invoice or payment, whichever is earlier, for time of supply. So that's what they are clarifying here. If invoices are not issued on or before specified date or date of completion of the event specified in the contract, tax liability would arise on the date of provision services or the date of receipt payment, which is earlier. As I said, if invoice not issued on time, as we have studied, then time of supply will be provision service or payment, whichever is earlier. So in this case, provision